come to this as well. South Africa is gearing up for a crucial general elections in 2024. The Democratic Alliance has bold plans to unseat the ANC, but it realizes it can't go at it alone and has launched the Moonshot Pact. Now, it aims to align opposition parties at a two-day convention this week, and now COPE says it's set to form its own alliance and will be talking to the EFF. Let's discuss this with political analyst and my colleague right here on ENCA. On the spot host Lukhona Mnguni joins me this morning, and thanks, colleague, for making time for this conversation. Quite an interesting week for coalition. Conversation around next year's general elections, but also how those who seem to be taking the coalition or alliance route are faring. Let's start with the DA. They introduced the Moonshot Pact. We were both at the Congress where John Steenhuisen said this is to unseat not only the ANC, but an ANC-EFF partnership, possibly for 2024. So far, how would you judge, their plans and how they have fared in lobbying other parties ahead of this convention this week?
Well, good morning, Tumelo, and good morning to our viewers at ENCA. I think since then, when this Moonshot Pact idea was launched, there isn't enough groundwork that has been done by the Democratic Alliance to unify at least a common platform of the agenda. Just 2 Sundays back, I had Herman Mashaba there in studio, and one of the things that he said to me was that, the very name Moonshot Pact will be the first casualty of the conversation on the 16th of August, and it will go into the dustbins of our political history. So there isn't even an agreement on the naming convention. I'm sure you might have seen the in-depth interview done by the Sunday Times with Peter Groenewald of the Freedom Front Plus, I think 3 Sundays back, where Groenewald was quite clear: South Africa is not ready for a white president. South Africa, he will go into the convention supporting that Velenkosi Mhlabisa of the IFP becomes the face of this Moonshot Pact. So, those are all telltale signs that the conversations are going to be robust. There are still things that, are points of disagreement in terms of how the DA is still positioning this as a DA initiative rather than a multi-party initiative. So all of those things cause tensions. Of course, they found a neutral chairperson in Prof. William Gumede, who has the difficult task of steering the ship into some forms of outcomes. But what those outcomes will look like, Tumelo, will it mean that they only promise us the values that they stand for, the minimum priorities at a policy level? Will they be audacious enough to come out and say, well, if we were to succeed, this would be South Africa's president?
Yeah. What do you also make of the trust deficit that seems to be looming so far? You look at Action SA. I spoke to Michael Beaumont, the chairperson, a couple of weeks before. He seemed and sounded very optimistic about the convention, in good faith going into this with other, multi-parties, and having this, election agreement being formulated ahead of next year. But now, if reports are anything to go by, there seems to be some sort of a skills deficit in as far as the DA's commitment to the pact and its looming possibility that they might be willing to actually partner up with the ANC next year.
Well, Tumelo, I've indicated previously that the upcoming 2024 elections are causing a bit of panic and nervousness for the country. And that's because suddenly, for the first time since 1994, there's no guarantee that the ANC will come back to power in some provinces and possibly even at national level. And so following the national dialogue on coalition governments that was convened by the Deputy President of the country on the 4th and 5th of August, the rumors have been swelling. Gayton McKenzie actually called it that it's no longer rumors for them, it's actually a reality. But this is not a new rumor. As far back as 2018, when you would have spoken to some people who perceive of themselves as influential in the political landscape and convincing political actors, the idea of a grand coalition between the ANC and the DA was already there as a talking point in some circles. And that's because people feel that, the fewer the coalition partners, the more stable the coalition government. However, it would have political implications for both political parties. And I don't think both political parties would actually survive into 2029 if they were to go into that kind of a coalition. Theoretically, it makes sense. But politically, in terms of the support basis, and the fundamental views that some of their support bases hold would probably alienate those support bases over time, and those support bases would look elsewhere towards the 2026 local government elections and the 2029 national and provincial elections. But of course, I think, again, because of the panic, players are shifting a lot of puzzles and pieces, and they are not strategic enough to win over people. So, for example, I think it was pretty much premature ahead of the convention for the DA to appear as though it is firmly positioned in the ANC's corner, and that's simply because of the private members' bills that the DA wants to introduce to amend certain parts of our electoral legislation or regulations, insofar as questions of thresholds are concerned, motions of no confidence, and so on. They seem very much alike with what the ANC desires, and therefore now other opposition parties feel that actually the DA is in marriage to actually probably wipe them out of participation and representation, whether in parliament or representation in a coalition government.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how the convention pans out. Also seeing reports that COPE says, they are open to an alliance with the EFF on the other hand, knowing very well the DA's mission was to remove an ANC-EFF coalition, at least from what John Steenhuisen had mentioned at the Congress. Colleague, due to time, I'll leave it there, but thank you so much for speaking to me. Political analyst as well as host of ENC is on the spot. That's Lukhona Mnguni joining me ahead of that coalition convention expected to take place in Kempton Park at Empress Palace.